All right, so thanks for tuning in. This is what I want to call an idea generator. This is really to get you rolling as a writer. Now, I know a lot of writers. I have been in that situation where, as a writer, you're always kind of fighting for good ideas. You know, sometimes in my mind, or at least in my experience, those ideas appear almost fully baked in my mind. Sometimes I have a skeleton of an idea and I can flesh it out a little bit, but sometimes I need help. And that's where this comes in. I want to show you a method for how you can develop an idea quickly without relying on external tools necessarily, anyway. Now, everybody's different. The writing process is incredibly unique to everyone. And for our purposes today, I am worrying about this idea generator being for adventure. Anything that's an adventure story, a western, a sci-fi, a modern mafia story, a fantasy story, maybe a historical story. If it's an adventure, that's what we're trying to develop. Now again, everybody's different. So what I'm showing you are tools, not rules, okay? Yes, tools, no rules. And I'm showing you a way to do this, not the way. A way, not the way. This is important. There is no one right way to do this because everybody is so different. And when you start to think about how incredibly unique you are as a person, you're not going to do it even the way I show you, although this might prompt you to develop ideas, right? So what I've done is I've taken a few sources here, and I have mashed them together. We have Lee Florin. He was a pulp writer in the 1930s. Michael Moorcock. So, he is a fantasy writer from the 60s and 70s. His stuff is incredibly trippy. He's famous for Elric of Melniboné. He's also famous for writing a novel in 3 days. He actually did that repeatedly. And he outlines his method on the internet. You can actually go online and he'll tell you how he did it. So what I've really done is base a lot of what I'm doing on what he has suggested. And I do use this method from time to time. Now again, sometimes I use plot generators, sometimes it's fully baked from my imagination, sometimes I do this. And what I noticed when I thought about the way Michael Moorcock does this is it's extremely similar to a thing called Index Card RPG, which is a D&D variant, kind of a tabletop RPG. The author, creator of Index Card RPG, ICRPG, has a method for developing an adventure in his story that's remarkably similar to the way Moorcock does it. So I took these two ideas and mashed them together. Ben Haas was a Western writer in the 50s and 60s, and he wrote a 4-page letter to his son detailing how he writes adventure stories. So we're going to take some of his advice today, too. And then we're going to look at Lester Dent, who is remembered for the Doc Savage stories. There are varying opinions on whether or not Lester Dent was a good writer, but nobody disagrees that his influence over the literary circles was immense. That this is a man who was rather genius at doing business, but also really good at story development, and he came up with some ways to help you develop a story. So what I've done is I've taken all of this and just mashed it together into one basic exercise, or a few basic exercises broken down into chunks. So we're going to get started with that. Let's go ahead and look at the first thing. This comes from Index Card RPG, but it also comes from Michael Moorcock, because this is remarkably similar to what Moorcock did. He suggested you just write down lists of things without thinking about them, and just by virtue of looking at those lists, you'll have a story. Well, so does Index Card RPG. They call it the log method, meaning location, obstacle, goal. And that really is the bare bones for your story. You always want to set your story in a unique setting. You always have an obstacle, some sort of conflict that your main character is up against, and there's always a goal. They're always trying to get something. And this is true whether you're doing literary fiction or you're doing what we call genre fiction or speculative fiction. No matter what kind of fiction you're writing, there's always a conflict. Otherwise, you don't have a story. So what this does is it helps us come up with a story. Now, what we'll do is I'll write down 6 locations. But first, let's talk about our genre. What kind of story are we writing? Are we writing a Western? Are we writing a fantasy? Are we writing a sci-fi? I think we're going to write a Western. And here's a good rule of thumb, by the way. Unless you're trying to make like a fantasy Western or a sci-fi Western, then you always want to err on the side of realism. And contrastly, if you're writing fantasy or sci-fi, you always want to err on the side of the fantastic and imaginative. So when we write our locations down, we're going to think of 6 realistic locations for a Western. So what's one location? Well, I think a ranch is very popular. Don't worry about this being cliche. The point is to write it down and not think about it at all. So let's say a train. You can tell an entire story on a train. Murder on the Orient Express did. Why not a Western? What if we did a prairie? I'm not sure how to spell prairie. I think that R-E-I-E? I think that's right. I don't know. I'm bad at things. I'm a writer that can't spell. I think that's right. Let's think of some more locations for a Western. What's another one? How about a town? Maybe a cow town. Let's think about a gold miners' camp. That's a good location for a Western. Somewhere on the frontier, you know. Maybe we put this in a valley? No. What if it was a gulch? No. What if it was a... what if it was a desert ravine? Kind of like in the Grand Canyon. Actually, let's just go with canyon. Desert Canyon. Those are all places where Westerns take place, right? We have seen movies and read books where these sort of things happen. So, there we have it. Those are our locations. Let's think about obstacles. What sort of obstacles would the hero in a Western face? Let's think about maybe a gang. That's not a bad idea. Maybe a corrupt politician. Oh, what if it's a banker, a greedy banker who wants land? That's a good idea. Let's think of some more. No thinking, actually. No thinking. Just write down the first thing that comes to your mind. Obstacle that a hero in a Western would have to face. Maybe Native Americans. Maybe he gets lost in the Apache wilderness. That's an idea. What about another one? Let's say a bounty hunter. Maybe our hero has a bounty on his head. Not a bad idea. Let's do one more. How about some sort of natural disaster? Doesn't matter what it is. Hey, look at that. We're almost there. Let's look at the G. This is your goal. What is your hero after? Let's write love. Love is always a worthy goal. Maybe revenge. Ooh, that's juicy. Maybe your hero is after a reward. Maybe your hero is after his reputation. He's trying to redeem his reputation. Maybe he wants a fortune. Maybe your hero wants a fresh start. Maybe he comes from a rough past and he just wants to start over. Well, that's great. Now we've got 6 locations, 6 obstacles, 6 goals. Let's think about how we string this together. Now, what we've essentially done is create a random generator. Now, what you could do, and this would be advisable, is to take something like a 6-sided dice and just roll randomly and see what you come up with. Or you could just sort through it and figure out what exactly you want. Just look at this list and link them together. But for our purposes, let's roll. We're going to say 2. This takes place on a train. 4. It involves Native Americans. And the guy's looking for love. Ooh. So our location is a train. He is looking for love, and he has to face Native Americans. That is very juicy, very saucy. So, what we'll do is we will keep note of this, right? Train, Native American, love. Now, here's the next thing you need to remember, and this comes from Ben Haas, who wrote the Sundance series. And no, his name is not Ben Haas on the actual book cover. He used a pseudonym. Anyway, Ben Haas argued that your hero can only be as strong as your villain. Your villain needs to be slightly stronger than your hero, so your hero always has something to come up against. Your villain needs to be smart. That doesn't mean he needs to be intelligent. It just means he needs to be proficient at being a villain. He doesn't need to be a bumbling fool who just gets lucky all the time. He needs to be intentional and calculated and dangerous. So let's write down 6 potential villains, right? Now remember, this must be tied to your obstacle. So, it only follows that our villain will be some sort of Native American. Maybe he's a brave. Maybe they're after the same woman. That's interesting. Maybe he is a chief. Maybe the chief wants revenge on the hero for some reason. Maybe he is a convert. Maybe he's converted to the Western colonial way of thinking. So maybe he's colonial friendly, right? And he is after the hero's lover. He's after the love interest. Maybe the love interest is going to marry this colonial convert. That could be an interesting tension, right? Our people versus your people. Where's the line? That's an interesting device we could play with. Maybe this is a rogue. Just a criminal, ran off on his own, stirring up trouble. Who knows what it is? Maybe this is a kidnapper. He just saw this white woman and decided he had to have her, and the hero isn't going to put up with that sort of thing. That could be it. Maybe this is just a classical Joker-style psychopath, right? Maybe that's what you're dealing with, is just a man who's bent on devastation, bent on destruction, right? Now, what's your hero? Now, in my mind, usually my hero is predetermined. I already know who I want my hero to be. He's somebody that is brave, that is competent, that maybe he's up against great, incredible odds, everything's stacked against him. Whatever he is, he's got to be able to contend with the villain, right? So let's write down 6 potential Western heroes. Maybe he is a former soldier, right? Maybe that has something to do with whatever villain you choose, that he fought against him in the frontier somewhere. Maybe he's a cowboy. He's just a humble ranch hand. Maybe he's a ranch owner. Maybe he has resources. Maybe he's a businessman of some kind that came to the Old West to seek his fortune, and now he is reverting to his primal instincts as he is trying to protect the love of his life. Who knows? We haven't gotten there yet. Maybe, just maybe, this is a bounty hunter himself. Maybe he's after this Native American, and he falls in love with the girl, right? Who knows? We don't know yet, but that's the beauty of this. We're telling ourselves the story. We're discovering the story as we do this. Maybe, one more. Maybe this is a gold miner who's on his train. He has obtained his fortune, and he's going home to find his loved ones, and he finds that they've been taken by Native Americans. I don't know. Let's find out. Let's roll for this. Let's see what fate tells us. Our villain will be the chief of a tribe, and our hero will be a bounty hunter. Ah, now that is interesting. So now our job as a writer is to figure out how all these elements connect. How do we tell a story on a train about a bounty hunter who is chasing after an Indian chief, and he's seeking love, but he has to go up against... So there it is. There's his villain. There's this obstacle. Native Americans, chief. So he has to go up against a tribe, a chief, in order to get his love. So this leaves us with a few questions. Questions that we need to answer. But we're not there yet. So how do we put all this together? How do we have a story that takes place on a train, or at least begins on a train, ends on a train, the climax is on a train? We don't know yet. How does it feature a bounty hunter? What's the bounty? Is it the girl? Is it the chief? Is it someone in the tribe? Does he fall in love with an Indian girl? There's a lot to explore here. How do we make the chief the bad guy? How do we make the Native American the bad guy? Maybe he's not really so much the bad guy as much as they are opposed to one another, right? Maybe it's a perspective thing. Maybe he's not just this snarling Indian chief. Maybe he's a noble Native American fighting to protect his people from this American bounty hunter, and their wires are just crossed. They're misunderstanding each other. There's 1,000, 1,000,000 stories you could tell with these elements, right? I mean, your brain is probably firing on all cylinders as we speak, just trying to come up with a way to put all this together and make it fit as a story. And there's a really good way to do that. This comes from Lester Dent. Lester Dent is famous for his adventure story plot formula. Now, you hear the word formula and you want to run away, but I've got news for you. Did you enjoy the Marvel movies? Then congratulations, you like formula. Did you like Star Wars? Then congratulations, you like formula. Did you like The Matrix? Congratulations, you like formula. Did you like Indiana Jones? Congratulations, you like formula. The trick is to hide the formula behind a story that is so rich and so well written that nobody notices or cares if it's formulaic. The reason we hate formula is not because it's present, it's because it's obvious. So the trick is to hide it. Now here's Lester Dent's approach. Also, you can find this online. You can also find Michael Moorcock's advice about writing a novel in 3 days online. But you can find exactly what Lester Dent wrote online, and he gives you a lot of really great tips for developing your villain as well, okay? But he has broken his story down into 4 equal acts. Now, let's say you're going to write a 6,000-word story. This is 1,500 words per act. Let's say you're going to write a 20,000-word story. This is 5,000 words per act. You can just break it down mathematically. Each act involves putting your hero in trouble. It involves an action beat at the end and a surprise twist. So, where is our hero? What kind of trouble is he in? Maybe he's a bounty hunter, right? Maybe he got wounded. We haven't seen that. We are let in on it. Maybe the story begins with him limping through the train station, right, with a bandage on his leg. He's been wounded. It needs to end with action. Maybe the Native Americans attack him. They attack the train while he's on it. And the twist is that his bounty is on the train. That's why the Indians knew where to find him. So bounty is on the train. He didn't know it, but the Native Americans knew it. Ooh. So we're putting ourselves in more trouble. We're doubling the trouble in the second act, right? He's in trouble. He's surrounded by the enemy. So that's where we begin. Surrounded by enemy. What is the action? We develop this, right? He's trying to overcome it. He's trying to get out of this situation. He's on this train. He's surrounded by the enemy. Got to get through it. Got to get past it. What's the problem? The problem is that the chief challenges him to a duel. What kind of duel? Ooh. But there's a twist. There is a twist. The chief's daughter begs for the bounty hunter's life. Oh. Begs for hero's life. Forgive my handwriting. I hope you're developing your own story as we go, by the way, because I think this is exciting. Act 3. Now we have trouble, right? Now the chief is furious. He's even more angry because here's his daughter falling in love with this bounty hunter. Oh no. When we get to the third part of the plot, somewhere along the way the chief orders the man's execution, so he has to escape execution. And, I mean, think about the drama on this. There are other passengers on this train that are being held hostage, that are being coerced to fight against the Native Americans. They're being rallied. They're being intimidated or oppressed. Maybe they're being executed systematically and robbed. Whatever it is, you've got a lot of tension built up here in Act 3, right? Think of this like a pressure cooker. And if this were your typical 3-act structure, this structure would go like this, and it would resolve at a climax. Just pressure cooker, pressure cooker, pressure cooker, pressure cooker, pressure cooker. Just gets worse and worse and worse and worse till you can't stand it, and then kablooey, big boom, right? So this is what we're looking at in this structure. Now, I'm not done talking about structure. I'm just showing you this as an example. But let's get to this twist. They escape execution. And the twist is that the chief was paid. Ooh, now we've got an even bigger question. If the chief was paid to do it, who paid to have the bounty hunter taken down? So this Act 4 has to end with a bang and a snappy final line. So what happens? How do we resolve this story? I say that the hero discovers his employer hired the natives. So he didn't have to pay. Ooh. And along the way, our hero falls in love, right? With the native chief's daughter. So we have a comprehensive story here. I mean, it's bare bones, but you have a story. And as of, let's see what time we're at. As of 20 minutes ago, you didn't have a story. Now you do. Let's bring this all together, right? A bounty hunter. This comes, by the way, from what was his name? Goodness. This comes from Lee Florin. This little synopsis thing. A bounty hunter strives against a native chief in a train to attain love. That's your story. That's what you just developed doing all this stuff. So let's talk a little bit more about structure really quick. You don't have to use Lester Dent's structure. This is specific to the adventure genre. If you wanted to do something more Harry Potter or Lord of the Rings or maybe Star Wars, you could use what's called the hero's journey. And do what I did here with the Lester Dent structure. Just look at the steps of the hero's journey and break it down. It's got something like 12 or 13 steps to the hero's journey. Just break that down, and that's where you know your story beats are. Maybe you can use Save the Cat, a very cinematic story structure. There's even an Asian story structure. I can't recall the name of it, but it involves symmetry. You begin in the same place, or you end in the same place you began, and the first half of the book is all struggle, and the second half of the book is the antithesis, leading up to complete victory in the end. You can use that one, or you can even just make up your own, which is going to require a lot of creativity, but that's what Christopher Nolan does with his movies. And of course, there's the traditional 3-act structure as well. Brandon Sanderson is famous for using a 7-act structure. I don't know how that works, but the point is, you can take this story, and depending on the kind of story you want to tell, you can lay it over any of these structures. And what you'll end up with is a comprehensive story that works, that functions, so long as you write it well, pour your heart into it, and you plan it intelligently. And some of you might think, well, I'm not much of a plotter. That's okay. You still need an idea. You can still do everything I've shown you in this video with nothing more than a 6-sided dice and a little bit of creativity and a little bit of thought. And you can put together an outline for a story just like that. And you will have something that you can write, and you will know what you're trying to do without plotting it out. You don't have to do the Lester Dent thing. You can just write it, and you will have in your head a fresh idea for a story. Now, the reason I did this is because so many people say they don't know what they would write about if they wrote. Well, congratulations, you don't have to think about that. You don't even have to buy a plot generator. And if you do, I advocate for the use of the Plot Genie. But this is your own plot generator. This is your own imagination. I just did all this right in front of you. Nothing fancy, no tricks or gimmicks. You figured out how to tell a story about a hero and a villain with an obstacle and a goal in a location, all by yourself with minimal effort. Pretty neat, huh? Storytelling is one part creativity, one part science, one part pure luck. And I say pure luck because I just let the dice decide this for me. Now, you'll think that's cheating. That's not cheating. I haven't written the book yet. My final product might not look anything like this. My final product could be something completely different. The point is, this got you started. This gave you your idea. Consider this an inspiration machine. And with that said, I hope that you have a wonderful time telling stories. Go forth, inspire. Go forth, tell stories. Go forth, share with the world who you are through the power of writing and storytelling.